Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be talking about the one, the only Zbeck network. Now, listen, you know me, I'm super high on this crypto. In fact, I do believe Zbeck is going to be one of the top runners for the 2026 altcoin season. Yes, I personally do believe altcoin season is going to be happening 2026 because of certain charts. The data they're representing. For me, it just screams altcoin season, a big melt off. Now, the only thing I am just waiting for is to see how Bitcoin reacts this month. But overall, I am expecting a altcoin pump. And then I do believe, whenever that happens, whether it's in quarter 1, 2, or 3, then we will be topping out and just going back to bear season. And sometimes people are like, well, can't you just give an exact date? No, I don't go off dates, I just go off of structure, right? There's certain structure that is starting to change, that is starting to form, that I'm really happy and been waiting for the last 2 years. And finally, for these last couple of weeks, we have been getting more and more confirmation of it. And I believe 2026 is the year of the altcoin season. Listen, right? There's been no doubt that, the last few days have been kind of slow for Zebec. We can see that, this is kind of the Monday candle, Sunday, and Saturday. And we even have like the Friday candle be whatever. Overall, right, not too much momentum. Yes, granted, most of these candles are kind of during the weekend, so we shouldn't ever expect too much movement. We can kind of see that when we go and look at something like, for example, the daily, we are kind of, in this type of zone where we have this support level at 0.00275, but we're kind of just in this zone, kind of boxed off. So overall, unless Bitcoin does surprise me, I will be expecting lower price action, right? But I am looking and waiting for confirmation because it's not the most certain just yet. Yes, technically the momentum hasn't been that well the last few days, but it doesn't mean that there can't be a burst to the upside. Sometimes we see, things go sideways, burst to the upside, and then they go further down, right? That's sometimes the case. Sometimes we can see, right, we kind of go sideways, we burst up, and then yeah, in this context, eventually we did go down. But when momentum usually slows down for Zbeck, it's usually preparing for some type of move. That is what I've ultimately noticed, because usually goes from a sell-off to sideways to pumping up. When we go and look at something like the 4 hour, it does not look healthy at all. When it goes to like the 1 hour, yes, also it doesn't really look that healthy. We are below this zone of 0.00285, right? And we can see we can do something like on the 4 hour, clear as day, right? Clear as day. So we're kind of just zoning right now. We're kind of just going sideways, nothing too crazy. And overall, right, kind of like especially the last 2 weeks of December, I expect December to be very slow. I'm going to show you a example for gold. And I know gold is in crypto and I know gold is in Zebec, but it is still a valid example. And we can see actually when we go to something like this, where is December of 2024? So December of 2024, I remember like it was just yesterday. We can see, momentum was a little bit slow the first few days of December, kind of just doing its own thing, burst up, boom, and then the structure was just kind of slow and weird, kind of for like the rest of December. Yes, it wasn't the absolute slowest and the absolute most dreadful, but it wasn't anything crazy. And we could also see like the first week was kind of just dead. We had a little bit of momentum, and then the last week was just kind of like whatever as well. And then we can obviously see then boom, staircasing very fundamentally, and it just kept going, start of January and everything. So that's ultimately what I expect for Bitcoin too. We can still see some decent moves, just nothing crazy. And the same thing with Zbeck as well. but I do believe, the market makers, the people that are running this world, that are running, crypto and everything, most of them are also, people, whether or not you believe that, they influence it this much, they are people, they go on holidays and etc. So, like I said, don't expect too much crazy movement, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not meaningful price action, even if it's small. When we go and look at some of our indicators, we can see the MA cross, right? The daily has been consistently bearish since pretty much mid October, and there's still at the moment zero signs of it flipping. All right. So obviously not the most ideal, but I overall wouldn't worry too much, people. Look, when we look at the bigger picture, you have to realize that, even if we start kind of going sideways or whatever, Zbeck was in a zone for a long time. We bursted out and we're kind of selling off, but we're on top of a zone, right? We are on top of a big box at the end of the day. So we are higher, right? We are higher. And you have to realize that, this is normal, right? This is normal. It would be scary if we were actually back in this section, right? If we were back all the way somewhere down here where Zebec was many months ago after a huge pump, and with so many new updates and partnerships and regulations and everything, then yes, I would be concerned. But we're kind of just chilling and creating a wave of structure on top of the wave of structure that was going sideways for a lot of 2024 and some of 2025. And eventually, we're going to start going from sideways to going up and up and up and up. And I do genuinely believe the next station is going to be roughly 2 cents, right? Because we do have the Fibonacci tool, right? If we take it from one of the relevant lows, so we do something like this, boom, right? Reverse, right? To 2.2 to 3.2, right? Is going to be pretty much between 1.5 cents to 2 cents. But since I expect strong momentum for altcoins and for Zbeck, 2 cents is very, very likely. And then from the 2 cents, right, depending how much we correct, I think that's when we start really getting the big burst move, right? Even if we come back down to 1 cent and then we start going up, I do genuinely believe, right, if we did get this type of structure, we would actually start breaking records because we would have those highs of 2 cents, probably some relevant structure at this around 1 cent, and then I would expect at least momentum to be going up heavy, right? At this point, when altcoin season does start happening, the Fibonacci tool becomes less and less relevant, because there's just so much momentum that usually, it exceeds expectations, right? We've seen it with Doge, XRP, XLM, HBAR. We've seen it with so many cryptos in the past where the Fibonacci tool just becomes relevant. But if you wanted another high probability zone, then we would be probably peaking between 3.2 to the 4.2. And for me, that is on the low end of stuff. Like that is genuinely on the low end of stuff, would be like 5 cents. In fact, obviously I wouldn't be disappointed because, in a way, it's still a lot of money, right? If we did go up to 5 cents or a little bit more than 5 cents, we're looking at 19.5x from these current positions, which, I mean, at the end of the day, truthfully, no one's complaining about that, right? No one would even complain of Zbeck hitting like 3 cents this cycle, because from here, it would be over a 10x your money, right? So, no one's truly complaining about a 2.5, 3, or 4 cent Zbeck. But of course, I do believe in the project and I do believe it's going to go higher and higher. I know this is the thing, people, right? When projects are down and people hear this, they just kind of get like this ick. They don't want to hear it. But, I'm not going to be telling you, oh, we're going to continue to go up and up and up and up and up when things are going to be going up, right? Unless they give a reason. It's the same thing back over here, right? It was literally when we did start to show reversal signs. I called reversals literally around this zone over here, right? So not the literal top, but a very, very good zone. And, people always disagree. Why? Because they just saw a lot of momentum over the last month, Zbeck going up roughly 800% from its bottoms. And of course, they're going to disagree. But that is why, trading is tricky, clicking the sell button is tricky, and all this stuff is tricky as well. So, but that's why I'm here, right? That's why I'm here. I'm trying to bring logical consensus. I'm trying to bring logical, I guess, statements and analysis, right? can't get too emotional when things are going to be going up, can't be too emotional when things are going down, can't even get too emotional when things are going sideways. It's just the name of the game. At the end of the day, even if you can cash out a 5x from what you initially put in, just in crypto in general, you would be very, very grateful, right? Even a 3x, right? If we're being very, very real, even if you had to wait 2 years for a 3x, most people would take that any single day. So that is it, though, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you guys did enjoy, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.